jump out to the D&M Leasing Hotline. And welcome to the program, making his Fan After Dark debut. He's host of Locked On Cowboys. He's a writer at the 33rd Team, Mr. Marcus Mosher. Marcus, first off, glad to have you on board. Glad to have you on the show tonight. And I guess number one, when you look at where the Cowboys are sitting at number 12, what's the first position that jumps off the page to you that the Cowboys should look to draft for?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on. I've been listening to the show for at least 20 years now, so this is cool to be on for the first time. But I think for me, it's the defensive line. That's where the talent is at this class. You're going to get an impact defensive lineman. Now, whether that's an edge rusher or a defensive tackle, they need help at both spots. And I think at 12, that's where the value is going to line up with the talent, whether that's Shamar Stewart, Walter Nolan, Mykel Williams from Georgia. I think they're going to have plenty of options sitting there at number 12 for them when they're on the clock.
So say they make that pick there, Marcus, and they get a defensive lineman. I think a lot of fans would enjoy Georgia's Mykel Williams. In the second round, would you do one of these four scenarios? I asked Brian Broaddus the same question. Would you trade that second-round pick for a Breece Hall and or Garrett Wilson, or would you pick a Caleb Johnson or a receiver in the second?
So I wouldn't trade for Breece Hall because he's on the final year of his deal, and he just hasn't looked the same since tearing that ACL during his rookie year. So I'm just out on trading for running backs and then having to pay him.
Okay.
Now, Garrett Wilson's different. Garrett Wilson is somebody that I would be willing to pay. I think he still has one more year left on his deal, plus the fifth-year option. I think he's a special, special player. So if you can get him for a second-round pick, I would do a second-round pick and more to go out and get him. So that one's easy for me.
Okay.
But I do think there's a lot of value here at the running back position, whether it is Caleb Johnson, who I love, Travion Henderson from Ohio State, Omarion Hampton, if he falls to that spot.
I was going to say, people are thinking Hampton might not even make it out of the first round now. We've seen him mocked at 12.
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to be okay there. I think one of those three running backs, at least one of those three, are going to be available. And I think if the Cowboys are patient here, they're going to be in a good spot.
Do we think some of the Hampton comparisons, because, look, he's getting a lot of comparisons to Jahmyr Gibbs, and it just so happens that Jahmyr Gibbs went at 12. We saw how that's turned out for the Detroit Lions, and, of course, we know that the Cowboys need a running back. Is that where is that where the dots are being connected when it comes to Hampton to the Cowboys at 12?
Here's what I think happens. I think there are some people around the NFL that believe the gap between Ashton Jeanty and Omarion Hampton isn't that big, and that's why you're starting to see people put Hampton up high in the first round, where I really think it's more the opposite, where I wouldn't be surprised if Jeanty's falling a little bit in these drafts, not because he's a bad player, but because of the positional value.
Yeah.
And maybe Jeanty goes 12, maybe he goes 15, 16, and Hampton goes in the 20s. I think it's more about those players being closer together in the minds of scouts rather than Hampton's top 15 pick, we got to go draft him there.
With Zach Martin retiring, which I think most Cowboys fans and media saw coming, and you see Brock Hoffman and TJ Bass step up in his absence, are you okay with those two guys filling the right guard position, or do you think the Cowboys need to take a premium draft position to pick up a lineman?
Okay is probably the right word. Like, if the Cowboys had to play a game tomorrow, I don't think any of us are, like, panicking about Hoffman playing right guard and BB playing center. But do you feel great about it? No. But I also don't know if you should be spending the 12th pick in the draft on a right guard. I mean, obviously Zach Martin worked out well to pick 16, but I don't like really any of these guards as much as I like Zach Martin coming out of Notre Dame in 2014. So I think that's bad business if you're taking guards at pick 12, especially with this team having so many needs at other spots. I think guard is a position day two. If you find a guy that you absolutely love, that's fine. It can't be at 12.
So would you pick a guard over any of these running backs, or even day three over a receiver, or maybe like a corner or linebacker that they're thinking about? Like, where are you putting that on the priority list?
I mean, it all depends on the player, right? Like, if you get a guy in round two that you think is a day one starter at guard, yeah, that's fine. I think it all comes down to how you value these guys. But I just I don't think of it as a massive need. I think it's not a luxury, but it is a position that can go on the back burner until you figure out the running back spot. You figure out who's playing three technique. You figure out who's starting opposite of Micah Parsons. Not to mention the cornerback situation is a little bit of a disaster right now as well. I could see them taking a guard in round 2, round 3, but I don't expect it.
Marcus Mosher, host of Locked On Cowboys, as well as a writer at the 33rd Team, joining us here talking all things Dallas Cowboys. It's been about a month and a half. Obviously, the news, shook the NFL world up when Brian Schottenheimer was selected to be the head coach. Then Luka was traded, so basically the Cowboys, for the first time in probably decades, fell to the bottom of the sports page because nobody was paying attention to what the Dallas Cowboys were doing. Now that we're kind of gearing back into draft talk after last night, where are you at on this Brian Schottenheimer trade and the staff that they've put together?
First of all, as a lifelong Lakers fan, thank you very much for Luka. I very much enjoyed watching that game last night, so I appreciate that. I'm okay on Brian Schottenheimer. I wasn't as down on the hire as I think many people were. I think your average Cowboy fan was hoping for somebody with maybe a little bit bigger name, right? A Bill Belichick.
Pizzazz.
Right. But it does seem like he put together a really good staff, and I think that matters a lot in the NFL. Look at the team that won the Super Bowl this year. I think most people had a lukewarm feel about Nick Sirianni going into the year, but he surrounded himself with some really good coordinators, Kellen Moore, Vic Fangio, and that kind of led him to the Super Bowl. And I thought that Schottenheimer did a really good job of building the staff with Clayton Adams running the offense, helping the offensive line, bringing in Matt Eberflus. I don't think this is an A++ coaching staff, but I don't think it's bad either.
Do you think the pieces around him and Clayton Adams and obviously getting the Oregon wide receiver coach, getting K-State's coaches, what do you think? How helpful do you think those guys will be, and how big of a role do you think they'll play?
I think they're going to be helpful. Honestly, here's the thing that I like the most about it. It's different. Right, I was so worried that it was just going to be Mike McCarthy 2.0 with the same staff coming back and Brian Schottenheimer just being the head coach. But the fact that they went outside the organization to get their offensive coordinator, they went to the college ranks to get their offensive line coach, they went to Oregon to get their wide receiver coach. That's what I wanted. I wanted some new voices in the coaching room, and they got it. We'll see. There's a lot of inexperience, and I think that's one thing that Cowboy fans should be a little bit nervous about. It might take them a while to kind of get going, but at least it's different. And that's what us Cowboy fans have been wanting for years, something different.
Are you as worked up? I know, they interviewed for Tashard Choice a couple weeks ago, and look, obviously the pelts he's got on the wall, especially from his time at UT, goes without saying. He interviews with the Cowboys, doesn't happen. Then a week later, boom, he's in Detroit. Everybody's like, look, there we go again. Cowboys being cheap. Look, you can't get everybody. You don't know everything behind the scenes that went down. Maybe money was involved. Maybe it wasn't. He also got the associate head coach position in Detroit, which I think went a long way. Plus, Jahmyr Gibbs was somebody that he had recruited years ago, so I think that might have been a factor as well. Are you as worked up about it as it seems like some other folks got losing to Tashard Choice at running back?
No, because it's a running back coach. This is the first time I've ever seen a franchise get upset about who they hired as a running back coach. I bet you most Cowboy fans don't even know who the running back coach was for this team in 2024.
Yeah.
I think it's because it's Tashard Choice. It's a former Cowboy. It's somebody they recognize. Plus, it's a program they know very well with a lot of good running backs. That's why people got upset. But in the grand scheme of things, like this is a nothing burger.
Well, maybe something that's not a nothing burger. We got the report that the Cowboys will be looking to draft a quarterback. Will probably be on day 3, be one of the later ones. What are some names that you're hearing that maybe they can connect to the Cowboys? I know one name that's been very popular is Quinn Ewers, speaking of UT.
First of all, this is an awful year to be needing like a backup quarterback, because you look at the guys that are going to be available, let's say 4th round on. It's not the most inspiring list, and I know there are a lot of people that think Quinn Ewers is potentially going to be maybe a top 75 pick in the draft. I don't necessarily see that, but I can't imagine the Cowboys spending one of the first 3 picks on Quinn Ewers. I think you're looking on day 3. Guys like Dylan Gabriel, who was super productive at Oklahoma and then Oregon. He's a small quarterback, so I think the ceiling's pretty limited there. Maybe you're looking at Kyle McCord from Syracuse, who was at Ohio State for a little bit. One of the things that I'm interested to see is, what does Brian Schottenheimer want from his backup quarterback? Does he want just a stationary backup like Cooper Rush? Or is he looking for somebody that has maybe a little bit more athleticism and they can be mobile? And we know Clayton Adams had Kyler Murray to help the run game.
Riley Leonard?
Are they looking to but the problem is I want my backup quarterback to be able to throw. And that's my issue with Riley Leonard, right?
Yeah. See, I'll push back on that just a little bit, because I felt like, and I watching the Senior Bowl or Reese's Bowl, whatever the hell they're calling it these days, I was impressed with Riley Leonard. I mean, look, no one's going to – I mean, I don't know that I necessarily want him throwing 30, 40 times a game, but, I mean, you know, he's not the worst, and I feel like Notre Dame kind of handicapped him a little bit with not letting him throw the ball more.
I agree. I don't think he is a non-NFL player. It's just right. I don't know if that's going to get Cowboy fans all that excited, right? Like, and that's where maybe I'm going to be a little bit more open to getting the athletic quarterback that has some developmental traits. But the problem is, who is that guy in this class? Outside of Jalen Milroe, there just aren't a lot of quarterbacks in this group, like after the top 50 picks.
I mean, I like your Dylan Gabriel. I think that's the best fit for a backup that's productive, knows how to work in a complicated system, can get the ball out quick. Also got a little bit of mobility. He's going to be your backup. I personally, if we're going to spend a guy that's in not round 4, don't have a round 4 pick, but day 3, round 5, Dylan Gabriel sitting there, I'm not mad at that pick.
Let me give you another quarterback. And I'm not sure where he's going to go, but I was really impressed by Will Howard, the Ohio State quarterback in the college football playoffs. I know he doesn't have a great arm, but, man, he made a lot of big-time throws. He's not a terrible athlete. He's got good size.
He's a big dude, too.
And you're not drafting a guy to be your franchise quarterback. You're drafting a backup quarterback. I think Will Howard would be a nice little day 3 project if he's there.
I don't hate that. You just wonder, is he going to last? Especially when you consider that you've got Chip Kelly, who's going to Vegas, and you wonder if they're going to scoop him up. But I don't hate that at all when you mention Will Howard.
He's just another one of these guys where you just wonder, has he already maxed out a little bit? Or do teams see him as a low-end starter that you can grab early on day 2? I have no idea where he's going to go in the draft.
And get you out of here with this one, Marcus. I don't take too much stock into who the Cowboys visit at the Combine. It's really those 30 days, when they're getting those official visits from guys here in Dallas. But if you did take away anything from the players they met with, maybe the types of players, maybe the schools, did you take anything away from the visits that they have set up or have already happened?
It sure seems like they're going to be targeting the front 7 of this defense. They've met with just about every premier defensive tackle, including Kenneth Grant, including Walter Nolan. Michael Williams was talking today about how much he loved meeting with Matt Eberflus. At this point, and again, I know we have 2 months to go, I would be pretty shocked if the Cowboys' first-round pick was anything other than a defensive lineman at this point.
Okay, real quick, 30 seconds or less. We know that our guy Stephen Jones has said that they're going to be selectively aggressive, whatever the hell that means. Do you see them making any discernible moves that don't include Eric Kendricks or 3 guys, right before training camp starts?
I do. I think they're going to go after one decent free agent, whether that's like in the $10 to $12 million range, maybe a receiver, maybe they look at the Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins range. Maybe they try to find a linebacker like Robert Spillane, Nick Bolton. I do expect them to sign one decent free agent.
And then go around the pieces and get some practice squad guys after that. No, I agree.
Love it. Marcus, man, I'll tell you what, great stuff from you, my friend. We got to do this again. Add him to the friends of the program list. Tell the folks at home that aren't already following you where they can find you on the X and the socials.
Yeah, it's at Marcus_Mosher, host a daily podcast, Locked On Cowboys, and right at the 33rd team. Go check those out.
We absolutely will. Marcus, let's do this again when the free agency starts and when we get closer to draft time.
Let's do it. Thanks, guys.